Hey guys, you're watching Divide by Zero Gaming. I'm Brent, I'm here with Tony, and this is a new little show that, something we've talked about doing for a little while now, where we basically are just going to go over any kind of important updates or changes to games we play. So it's kind of going to be like a news and discussion type thing, and we're just going to go over updates and our thoughts on them. And for this first episode, we have two things lined up. First of all, we have Terraria patch 1.0.6, which came out about 2 days ago, I believe, as of the time of recording this. And the second is we're going to be looking at Skarner, the Crystal Vanguard, who's the new champion for League of Legends that came out a little while ago. That's a little less relevant now, he's been out for a while, but we're going to take a look at that anyway.
Oh yeah, so as you guys probably know, I am Tony here, so we are doing a dual cast at each other's place. So I mean, we're just sitting next to each other now with the big mic in the middle. It feels pretty
professional. Alright, so to start off with, we're going to be going over the Terraria 1.0.6 changelog, as it's so called. I have the full list of updates posted by one of the developers of Terraria here. We're not going to go over everything because it is an enormous list and that would take way too long. But if you guys want to read this, I'll throw the link down in the description so you can go look at the full changelog. And we're going to be highlighting a few of what we think are the key points to this. So to start off with, we have the shadow chests, which I think is one of the biggest features. Shadow chests are basically, they're in dungeons now, and they are these, like a higher tier of chests above gold, and they have a lot of the items that used to be rare drops from monsters. For example, Sun Fury now comes from shadow chests. I can't say that very well at all. Shadow chests. Something worth noting is that these chests are locked and you need to get keys to actually be able to use those chests. And these keys, you can find in a number of places. You can find them from killing dungeon monsters. You can find them in other chests or pots around the dungeon. There are two types of keys, the golden keys, which are a one-use, and then the shadow keys, which you can use any number of times. So that's just a new little thing for people who enjoy dungeoneering.
Yep, so the second big change that we noticed, and this is pretty much the biggest change that I saw, was definitely the potion nerf. So basically, instead of having like the 15-second or whatever it was cooldown every time you could use a potion, it's actually now a 1-minute cooldown between potions. So bosses and long sustained fights just got a whole lot harder.
Yeah, I believe something else, I can't actually find the exact note for it right now, but I remember seeing it somewhere that potions actually heal for less than they used to as well. So overall, pretty big nerf to those. It's going to make boss fights a lot harder because the developers were saying that a lot of boss fights were just kind of a walkover, especially once you get to the higher level of gears, and they wanted to kind of make it so the boss fights were actually a challenge again. And so the way they did that was going about nerfing potions, which I think is pretty big, because I remember in some of the boss fights we did earlier, it's pretty much just spamming potions the entire time, and you can get through the fight no problem. I feel like I had something else I want to say on this. Oh yeah, they did put in one nice little thing where you now actually will regenerate health when you're not in combat automatically, so you don't actually have to be wasting potions when you're not in combat, which is a nice little compromise, I think.
And I think some of the accessory items like the regrowth and the potion for regrowth are actually going to become a lot more handy.
Oh, definitely.
And people are going to be using those more instead of just making pots and using
I think,
pots.
I honestly, when I used a potion of restoration, I think they're called, I didn't even, notice the difference it was doing because it was so inconsequential compared to the fact that I was just knocking back a potion every 10 seconds. So, yeah, that's pretty big change. I think that's the highlight of this patch, pretty much. Everything else from here on out is just kind of smaller little things. We do have, there is now not a knockback on cacti, so when you're running through a desert, you will still take damage, but you will not get thrown backwards, which is incredibly nice, I have to say. I was running through a desert the other day, and it was amazing.
I think that's right there my favorite patch. I remember distinctly getting trapped between two cactus and just thrown back and forth.
Did you die?
I did die in the end.
That's awful. Alright, something else, they've changed the mechanics on flail so that I didn't really understand the patch note on this, honestly, and I haven't gotten the chance to test it, but it said if you hit the, left and right arrow keys are A and D while it's out and you're holding the mouse button, you can actually change the direction of the flail so you can swing it around. It doesn't just go like in a straight line out and back anymore. So I mean, that will be, I think, kind of useful for trying to hit guys that are behind walls or anything like that.
Definitely.
They changed it so that all walls now act as house walls. So for example, dirt walls didn't actually used to count as house walls. You couldn't make a house with those, and now you can. So that's kind of nice if you ever wanted to have like a dirt cave in your house. Next up, you cannot equip 2 of the same accessory anymore. So
I don't like that one. That was the heartbreaker for me. I mean, no more stacking feral claws and just having massive
huge
swing
attack speed.
But
yeah, I can see why they did that though, because I think what you just described is a little bit game breaking in terms of balance, not quite what they had intended. And I also think I can see how with the potion nerf now, people could just start like stacking regrowth pendants or whatever they're called to try to overcome that. And I can see why they wanted to put that in there to keep things like that from happening.
Yeah. I think what was I gonna say? I agree. Just that I do think certain combinations of things were definitely broken, like the feral claws and things like that. And I think that was a good change for the better. I mean, it's kind of annoying for the players, but I do think that
we'll thank them later. All right. Next up, there is a huge list of changes to the higher tier armor sets to try to make them a little bit more class specific. I'm just going to pretty much read this directly off of the patch notes here. Meteor armor increases magic damage, and the set bonus is that the space gun has no mana cost. Molten armor has a set bonus of melee damage. They did actually nerf some of these armors, by the way, in the sense that armors like a molten armor used to give off light when they move. It now no longer does that. You still get like the flame animation on the molten armor, but it doesn't count as a light source anymore, which made me really sad because I miss never having to bring torches into caves. That was really nice. And they also nerfed Orb of Light so that it gives less of a light radius and moves slower, so that was just overall annoying to me. We'll get a little bit more into that later, I think. Shadow armor increases melee attack speed, and the set bonus is the movement speed increase. The necro armor increases range damage and gives you reduced ammo consumption for the set bonus. And finally, jungle armor increases your maximum mana, magic, and crit chance, and the set bonus is reduced mana usage. Something else that's worth mentioning because it just came in here, they did put critical hits into the game, so you now have a chance to get crits whenever you're attacking an enemy, which again, probably something that's going to be big in boss fights if you're getting those crits doing more damage, especially if you have the jungle armor to give you the bigger crit chance.
Yeah, I think they definitely kind of made the jungle armor kind of that the crit chance, like you said, and I mean that's going to be really helpful. I think kind of jungle armor was overlooked as kind of an armor just because it did like increased mana regen, and I mean again you could just chug potions and regenerate your mana really fast, and I don't think a lot of people chose jungle armor over the other ones. I know, for example, I was using anything from Molten to the Necro armor, so I think they kind of evened them all out in different respects, and they kind of made them more class specific, so that you kind of know which armor to get if you want to play as a certain class.
I think it's definitely going to give a stronger sense of roles to our game. Like I remember when we would do boss fights, you would always take the ranged weapons and be doing DPS, and I would be trying to tank it with the heavier defense armor. But even then, there wasn't like a huge distinction. And I think this is going to help a bit in terms of setting apart different classes and roles for the game. Which, I mean, is very difficult to do, I think, in a game where you don't have abilities or skills or talents or any of that. It's hard to get a class distinction, and I don't really think that was ever the main focus of Terraria, to be a class-based RPG. But I do think this is going to help set up the distinction a little bit.
Talking about distinctions, we have probably the most distinct item on this patch list. I know I said that about a couple other things, but I did forget about this one. This is the trash can.
My favorite thing ever.
Thing put in this game.
You now have a trash can icon in your inventory, and if you put an item there, it will just destroy the item. Flat out, item disappears. So there's no more of that. You're like walking through a cave and you have a full inventory and you start trying to throw stuff away, and then you just automatically pick it up again as soon as you stand too close to it. None of that annoyance. Stuff is gone. It does store the last item you threw away in the trash can, so if you accidentally like throw away your Sun Fury or your Maramusa, you can get that back. But It's just so nice. I can't even begin to describe how much I love that feature.
Yeah. Mad props to Terraria people there.
And you can also actually craft a trash can now to put in your house, and then you can throw stuff away in that trash can as well, I believe. I think it also has the functionality to it.
Yep.
Something else worth mentioning, there are a ton of just new cosmetic items that don't actually really do anything but just look nice that you can decorate your house with, and we'll probably be doing a full video on some of those new items later on. We're not going to go into it right now just because there's not a lot to really say about it aside from it looks cool, and that's really something that you need the visuals to appreciate. So we're probably going to come back to that later on. If that video is out, I will put a link to it in an annotation somewhere, so keep an eye out for that. And moving down the list, the new hardcore mode, which we were actually talking about earlier. Something I'm incredibly glad they did not have in the game when we started our multiplayer videos. What is considered hardcore now, i.e. you lose your items on death and go back to the spawn point, is now considered medium core. There are 3 difficulties. Soft core, which is you lose money on death and that's it. Medium core, you lose all of your non-starter items. Hardcore is like the new extreme mode. You lose all of your items. It resets your health and mana to their basic levels, so 100 health and no mana. And you get turned into a ghost that can't interact with anything until you disconnect and reconnect from the game to the game world. So basically, it's like a hard wipe on your character. And I am extremely glad that you aren't on that, Hugh, because you die so often.
I am very disappointed they didn't have that in the game when I made my character, because it's all about the hardcore mode, and I mean, that would have been...
Oh my
that would have
god.
been terrible in so many regards.
So yeah, I'm glad that that's only coming out now. Although if any of you are looking for a sadistic challenge, then that's there for you now, so you can go try that out. Speaking of character creation, they did also mention that there are a few new hairstyles and a new male-female setting that will toggle the voice acting for your character. So just another little cosmetic change, nothing groundbreakingly important. Something else, debuffs. This is another new thing that was put in. You can get debuffs such as poison or burn. These are different from buffs in the sense that you can't click them off like you can with the buffs. And I think most of this is kind of stuff that was already in the game to begin with, and they've just redone the format for it now. One thing I did notice was burn. If you step on lava, you now actually get burned and take damage over time, which I think is going to be incredibly annoying, albeit a cool mechanic. So debuffs, just not really a huge change.
Yeah, I think they just kind of put a label on what was already there.
Yeah,
I mean,
definitely.
It's probably not going to be the greatest damage over time.
Yeah, I think they said it was like 1 to 2 damage from lava, which is, like when you get to the higher levels, it's going to mean nothing. So.
Yep. And if you're looking for more of a challenge in dungeons, I know for some people, dungeons have been pretty much a breeze once you get to the higher tier stuff. Like they said, they were trying to make the game a little bit harder. They did put some new things in the dungeons. They put in spike balls. The wheels, I don't know exactly.
I think they're called like blazing wheel, I think.
And they basically just added these things that you can find in dungeons that now make it a little bit harder. Like, for example, the spike ball is you can't pick it up, you can't destroy it. It's basically just mounted to the ground at a certain point, and it's just a flail-based mechanic, and it basically hurls itself at you. So it's just kind of an obstacle you have to avoid. And the wheel just follows the walls, and it is actually possible to kill if you surround it in walls and then put lava inside. You can actually kill it over time, but again...
Or alternatively, you can just try to trap it since it doesn't drop loot. So.
Yeah, or you could just jump it.
That's the most simple solution. I would actually like to see people, like, trap these things, like, create a tunnel and get them in their homes, though. I think that would be pretty amusing. And you know somebody's going to do it eventually, so...
100%.
Kudos to whoever actually has the time and effort put in to do that.
A new update that they're doing is they're taking away the... I'm
actually going to cut you off for just a second because we have one more new NPC that we forgot to mention here. That is the Goblin Scout. It is a goblin that will just spawn in the world anytime. If you kill it, it has 100% chance of dropping this new item, Tattered Cloth. And what Tattered Cloth does, you can use it to craft an item called the Battle Standard. And that's a consumable item, kind of like the suspicious looking eye or the worm food that summons the goblin army. So if you want a giant army of goblins running around your world and you don't want to just have to wait for the RNG to bring that up for you, you can now actually fight the goblin army on command, which is cool because as far as I'm concerned, it was one of the only bosses that you couldn't actually trigger if you wanted to. I think on King Slime, there's no known way to trigger him either. I could be wrong, but I think he's still RNG at this point.
Yep. And I believe there was another NPC that came out that was a slime that would drop golden keys.
Yeah, the dungeon slime, which, as the name suggests, appears in dungeons.
So, I mean, that's pretty cool. It's kind of one of those smaller changes. It pretty much is just an average slime, only it drops keys.
And as long as we're talking about keys, one thing that I actually think I forgot to mention is that you now also need these keys to unlock chests on floating islands. You can't just walk in there and take the loot anymore. Very saddening.
I think they definitely add a lot of playtime by doing these different changes.
Oh, definitely.
It's one of those things like you find the floating island and you kind of have to bookmark that and come back once you have a key.
Yeah.
And then if it's, for example, the golden keys, you have to kind of choose which one you want to unlock, and it kind of adds kind of a sense of mystery to which one you're opening. And I think it makes golden chests feel a lot more rewarding, in my opinion. So I think that's definitely a really good change for the better. Like I was saying, they're taking away, while we're on kind of the slime topic, lava slimes were very annoying. Every time you killed a lava slime, they would spawn lava where they were standing.
So awful.
Definitely bad.
I destroyed so many items in hell that I wanted to pick up by fighting a lava slime near them. Worst thing.
So they took that mechanic out of the game. Lava slimes do not now generate lava when they die, so I think that's another good change. I'm
kind of questioning just like the motive behind that, because I feel like although it was incredibly annoying, it was definitely something that made hell. Like hell has always been one of those places where you go in, get what you need, get out, because you're just getting attacked by everything. Monsters spawn so much, there's lava everywhere. It's not a place you want to spend a lot of time. And although the mechanic was very annoying, like, I feel like it was annoying in the good way that makes you feel like you don't want to stay down there for too long. So I'm kind of questioning why they decided to take that out.
Right, and I kind of want to know if they're going to have any kind of replacement for the lava slimes, or if lava slimes are just going to end up being kind of another slime creep. Because I know once you get up to the higher level armor and stuff like that, slimes are not anything of a challenge to deal with. And I do agree, I think that lava slimes did have kind of that unique characteristic of dropping the slime or dropping the lava, and it made them kind of an interesting thing to fight, kind of very dynamic.
All right, we have just a few more things to cover this before we move on to Skarner. Thorns are now destroyed when you jump on them, so in Corruption you can't basically just go like chained between thorns perpetually, as you were talking about with the cacti earlier. They do get destroyed once you take damage from them, so you can still get hurt on them, but only once. And finally, there are, as I mentioned earlier, a bunch of new cosmetic items, and I think that is covers pretty much everything I wanted to go over here. I feel like I had one more thing to say, but I am blanking on it, so we're just going to forget that and move on to the next topic, which is going to be Skarner, the Crystal Vanguard, who is, as we mentioned earlier, the new champion that was recently introduced into League of Legends. He is, for those of you who don't know, a giant crystal scorpion. I actually have not seen him in a game yet because I haven't been able to play that much since he was released. I was away, and hotel room with bad internet connection didn't really want me playing League of Legends that much. So I don't really know too much about him. I don't know if you've been in a game with him so far, Tony.
I have not, but I have seen some videos on him, so I understand the mechanics. We
may not be entirely qualified to talk about this next topic, but we're going to try to do it anyway. So we have the League of Legends wiki pulled up here just so we can kind of look at the abilities. We start out with Energize, which is his what's the word I'm looking for? Passive. That is it. Passive ability. And it says it's going to reduce the cooldowns of his abilities every time he does a basic attack. So he gets 1 second cooldown reduction when he auto attacks a champion, and half a second when he attacks any kind of non-champion. So creeps, jungle minions, anything like that. His next ability is called Crystal Slash, and he basically attacks everything nearby him. It's kind of an AoE type thing, and he charges himself with Crystal Energy for 5 seconds, and then if he casts Crystal Slash again while he has the Crystal Energy, he's going to do bonus magic damage, and he's going to slow all the targets that he hits for 2 seconds.
Mm-hmm.
His next ability after that is called Crystalline Exoskeleton, and he gets a shield for up to 6 seconds, which increases his movement speed and attack speed. So I've heard that's really useful for chasing down or running away from champions.
Mm-hmm.
His ability after that is called Fracture, where he summons a big blast of energy that deals damage to any enemy that is hit by it and puts a mark on them that lasts for 6 seconds. And if they take any damage after that while the mark is still active, then he gets some health regeneration off of it. So kind of similar to the way the Vorpal Sword mechanic works on Shen.
Mm-hmm.
And finally, his ulti, which is actually something I really want to see in play. He throws his tail out. It's called Impale because he uses his tail to impale another champion. And they are suppressed for 1.5 seconds, I believe. Takes magic damage, and during the time that they're suppressed, they're literally just dragged around behind his tail, so they're being like dragged around the arena and they can't really do anything about it. So I think that's a pretty interesting mechanic, honestly. And I think also my understanding of it is if they're like far away, they get dragged back towards him, which I've heard is really useful for, say, there's somebody trying to run away, and you use a combination of the Crystalline Exoskeleton to charge at them, and then you use the Impale to hit them with the tail and drag them back.
Mm-hmm. It's definitely a very, very powerful ultimate. I think the thing about him is he's a very strong hero, but he only has kind of that one show type thing. He does do a lot of damage. He is a melee DPS tanky type hero, so I mean he is focused mostly on auto attacks and getting in close and doing a lot of tanking and things like that. And that ultimate is a suppression, so there's only a couple other suppressions in the game. So I feel like right now, besides being a jungler, he's kind of a one-trick pony where you flash in, you impale them, and you drag them back to your team. And right now, that's going to be really, really strong. So I'm going to be surprised if you don't see him in a lot of bans. And
it seems
like and stuff like that.
Basically that ult is like a hard counter to an AD carry, really.
Mm-hmm.
Or I guess an AP carry to a degree, too.
Yeah, any type of...
Really just like ult the carry, and then they're out of the fight for 1.5 seconds, at which point if your team is well coordinated, you should easily be able to nuke them down in that time, take them out. So it seems like it's going to be a really powerful ult.
And I'm pretty 90% sure that they can still take damage while they're impaled, while you're dragging them around. So I mean, you just impale them while they're suppressed, and you're just completely stomping on them as you drag them around for a couple of seconds. And just the ability to kind of drag them around. I am not sure. I will come back and check in on this. If once you impale someone, if you are able to then flash or ghost.
It actually says right here, you cannot use flash while having an enemy suppressed by impale. And I'm not sure if that means you are literally unable to use flash, it grays out, or if it means using a flash will break the suppression.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, either way, you can't like impale them and then flash across the map to get them super out of position.
Mm-hmm. So that kind of gimmick play is definitely good. You could still use Ghost, which would make your 1.5 seconds
much more effective.
More effective. I think that ult's going to be very powerful until either people learn how to counter him, or
the thing I'm wondering about, I mean, this is going to sound like a stupid question, but as I said, I haven't seen him played before, so is it possible to, like, break it somehow? Say they impale the person, is it possible to interrupt his ult, per se, and stop the suppression early? Because I know, like, with a Warwick ult or a Malzahar ult, which are other suppressors in the game, if you do any kind of interrupt on those because they're channels, so, like, for example, if I, as Shen, taunt Warwick or Malzahar while they're doing their ult, it breaks the ult, the suppression is released. The thing about Skarner's ult is that he impales them, at which point he can then move around freely, making it sound like it's not a channel. So I'm not really sure if there's going to be a way to actually break that suppression. And that said, the suppression is definitely shorter than the other suppression ults in the game. But like 1.5 seconds, you can still do a lot of damage in that time, especially if you're in a coordinated team environment.
Definitely. I think different things like, for example, a Janna ult that would cancel kind of a Malzahar ult or a Warwick ult are not going to. Again, I haven't seen it in game, so I'm not 100% sure on that. But I think the way this is going to be countered mostly is suppressing or stunning Skarner himself after he impales. So getting your AP carry impaled and then just making sure to have a stun up and ready for Skarner.
Yeah, well, the thing about that is that I'm not actually sure suppressing Skarner would be the absolute best thing to do in that scenario. Like, yes, it would make it so we couldn't move beneficial, but it almost seems like the better thing to do at that point would be to try to get at whoever's like doing the most damage to the person that has been ulted. So for example, trying to stun or suppress their AD carry so that they can't get all those free shots off. And I'm not actually, again, as I said, I don't really know what I'm talking about with this topic, I'll admit that just right off the bat. But it seems like I'm not really sure like which one of those would be the most effective method.
I feel like the more out of position like your squishies are, the worse it's going to be. So the longer that he can move around with your carry attached, it's going to end up being worse and worse just because he can just drag it farther and farther into kind of the enemy territory while they're going to have problems. Because if you think about it, if you stun the Skarner and then the ult ends and your AD or carry or whoever squishy that has been pulled or whoever has been pulled can if they haven't really been moved at all, they're still kind of in position, and Skarner's the one that's out of position. I feel like definitely suppressing him is going to be, or stunning him is going to be the way to go about.
Yeah. One other thing that I do actually have to say about this ult is that it seems like it's going to be, I mean, Skarner was kind of designed to be a jungler in mind. Like we saw with the lifesteal, for example, always a useful thing to have when jungling. And I just, like, I see this being a good jungler, like that's what I've heard so far. And I see his ult being incredibly good for ganking. It's got range 125, so like not an enormous range, but still decent enough range that if they walk, say, too close to a bush that you're hiding in, you could pretty easily grab them from the bush, at which point they're just done. So I think he's going to be a very good jungler in the regard that he's just going to be able to go all over the map suppressing and ganking.
Yeah, you thought like Rammus ganks were scary. Wait till you see a guy come and impale you and drag him back into his team. Like, that's gonna
it's gonna hurt a little bit.
He's the only hero in the game that I'm aware of right now that has a shield and a self heal. So definitely jungling is going to be very strong. I've heard that keeping because his crystalline exoskeleton does give a movement speed and attack speed increase while it's up. So one of the big things I've been hearing is while jungling, you want to have the right runes to make it so it lasts as close to that 6 seconds as possible, and so it doesn't break.
This is what I'm understanding from what you just said. If the shield wears off before the 6 seconds because it's taken too much damage, you do lose the attack speed increase. Okay.
And the movement
makes sense, yeah. And that also makes it seem like it's going to be a very important thing in team fights to try to make sure that shield does not stay up, to try to
100%.
nuke that down before we can actually take full advantage of that and do a huge amount of damage. I mean, like we said, the Impale Crystalline Exoskeleton combo just seems like it's going to be so annoying in this whole number of scenarios. For example, you're chasing somebody down, you pop the shield, you're moving faster, you hit them with the Impale, you drag them back, they're done. Team fights, you put up the shield, you're not taking as much damage, first of all. You impale somebody, and then you just run off with them. Or also in a team fight, if somebody's running away, trying to get out of there, hit them with the impale, drag them back into the fight, pick them off. Just seems like there are so many good situations where you could actually use this ult.
Yeah, I think definitely impale and the movement speed from the crystalline exoskeleton are going to go very well hand in hand. I think teams that are playing against Skarner are going to have to be very careful about when they choose to burst, because if they use all their burst and then the crystalline exoskeleton goes down, he's going to have that movement speed if he survives the initial burst, and then he's going to be able to outrun you for that 6 seconds, and if he's running away, that's going to be something definitely hard to catch. So I think waiting for him to pop that and then choosing to burst is definitely going to be one of the effective strategies.
I feel like that's just such a thing, and just like so many scenarios in LoL is you have to wait for somebody else to do something so that you can counter it. And I feel like it almost creates kind of this interesting meta of like, you don't do something specifically because you know that they're just waiting for you to do it so they can counter it. And I think it is one of the very interesting things about team fights in this game is just you always have to be trying to think like 2 or 3 steps ahead of your opponent.
Yeah, definitely. What do you think about the cosmetics of this character? I mean, he's really the only one that's not a humanoid type.
I think we're seeing a few others so far. Actually, I guess now that you mention it, like, we have seen very few characters that are in no way humanoid. I know we've seen monsters like Cho'Gath, Maokai, I can't pronounce his name right. But yeah, even if you think about that, they got like the 2 arms, 2 legs, face. So he is literally just like a scorpion. That's an interesting point. I have to say, I feel like it's going to look a little bit weird, just like all these people running around and then a giant scorpion. Mm-hmm. But I do think, just having seen the skins and the models, like, it is a very nice looking character, I have to say.
Yeah.
I've just always kind of been a fan of like that crystal aesthetic. It was the same reason I loved Deep Home back when I played WoW, just because it was a really nice looking area. Mm-hmm. And I also do love the Earthrune skin, like the I don't know the name of it here. The Sandskirt Skarner almost seems like a step backwards. They kind of take this scorpion and then they make it all crystalline to add like an interesting twist to it and say, hey guys, it's not just a normal scorpion, it's a crystal scorpion. And then when the skins actually just makes it into a normal scorpion. But the Earthrune I think just looks absolutely awesome. Like, I believe we've seen an Earthrune somebody else before. I can't exactly place it. But I've seen a skin that looks like that before in somebody, but I do think it's a really nice looking skin.
Malphite has a couple skins that look kind of the crystal aspect to him.
Yeah, I do. It's definitely a nice looking champion. I do think it's gonna look just a little bit like out of place in terms of it being the only non-humanoid character. But at the same time, I don't really think that's a bad thing at all. I think it's kind of cool that they're branching out a little bit. So I personally look forward to actually seeing him in a game because, as I've said, I haven't actually seen him yet, but I think it's a nice, just overall, like a nice looking character.
No, yeah, I agree. I think this might kind of lead to them branching out in their characters, making them a little bit more unique and not as humanoid as they are. Because, I mean, yes, they're all interesting, but they do all have that kind of the same look of eyes, face type thing where, I mean, this is a scorpion. It's very obviously a scorpion.
Yeah.
Like,
even understanding kind of the animal characters before, like Warwick is a werewolf, Cassiopeia has a human top half, so it's cool that they're just going like, this is an animal, get over it. It's kind of cool. I like it.
Yeah.
Alright, so I don't really have anything else to say on these issues. I think I've pretty much gotten all the points I wanted to get out of the way out there. I don't know if you have anything else you want to add before we sign off?
No, I mean, I think he's pretty much just going to be a tanky DPS for the time being. I really need to see some gameplay before I kind of label him under any specific categories. But I definitely think that ult is very unique. I like it. I think it's going to be interesting to deal with and have on my team at different times. So
yeah. And if we do this entire thing and find out that we were completely wrong in every imaginable way, we will come back and let you guys know about that. That said, I think we covered really everything we wanted to say. So if you guys enjoyed this, feel free to leave us a comment, thumbs up, subscribe to the channel if you want to see more of this stuff in the future, and we'll see you guys later.
All right, peace out.